My parents made me pay for and build a house for myself, but kicked me out on moving day to give everything to my sister. Revenge came when the house literally collapsed. Subscribe to the channel and like the video to see more stories like this. 28 years old. That number represents independence, hard work, and the American dream I was chasing with every fiber of my being. My name is Sarah, and for the past 6 years I've been working as a civil engineer for a construction company in Denver, Colorado. My apartment downtown was small, but mine, a symbol of everything I'd built through late nights studying and early mornings on construction sites where I had to prove myself twice as hard as any man. I raised myself really. My parents, Michael and Linda, always made it clear that my younger sister Emma was their golden child. Emma, now 25, had never worked a day in her life. While I was getting my engineering degree and working part-time jobs to pay for it, Emma was getting her communications degree, which basically meant 4 years of parties funded by our parents. But I never complained. I put my head down, worked hard, and built my own life. The call came on a Tuesday evening in March. I was reviewing blueprints for a new office complex when my phone rang. "Sarah, honey, your father and I have been talking." My mother's voice was unusually sweet, the tone she used when she wanted something. "We have a proposition for you." I set down my pencil, already sensing this wasn't going to be good. "What kind of proposition, Mom?" "Well, you know how Emma is finally ready to settle down with that nice boy Marcus she's been dating? They want to start a family, and living in our basement just isn't practical anymore." I almost laughed. Emma had been dating Marcus for 3 months, and he was about as stable as a house of cards, but I kept my mouth shut. "We want to build a house," she continued. "A beautiful family home where Emma can raise her children. Something permanent, something that will last generations." "That's great, Mom. I'm sure Emma and Marcus will love whatever you decide to build." There was a pause. Then came the punch. "Actually, Sarah, we were hoping you could help us with the financing, and maybe use your expertise to oversee the construction. You know, make sure everything is done right." I felt my stomach drop. "Mom, are you asking me to pay for Emma's house?" "Not just pay for it, sweetheart. It would be your house too. We'd put it in your name and you could live there with Emma and Marcus, like a family compound. Isn't that wonderful?" I stared at my reflection in the black window of my apartment. Outside, Denver's lights twinkled like stars, and I thought about all the nights I'd worked overtime to afford this view. "Mom, I already have a place to live." "Oh, that tiny apartment? Sarah, this would be a real home, a place where you could finally feel like you belong. And Emma would love having her big sister around to help with the babies when they come." The manipulation was so transparent, it almost insulted my intelligence. But there was something in her voice, a desperation I'd never heard before. Against my better judgment, I found myself asking, "What exactly are you proposing?" "We found the perfect lot in Lakewood. It's got mountain views, great schools nearby, the kind of place where children should grow up. We just need someone to handle the financing and construction oversight, someone we trust." "How much are we talking about?" $400,000, maybe $450 with all the upgrades Emma wants." I nearly choked. $450,000? That was more than I'd make in 5 years. "Mom, I can't afford that kind of money." "Oh, but you can. With your salary and credit score, you could get a construction loan easily. And once it's built, the value will only go up. It's an investment in your future too." I should have hung up right then. I should have said no and gone back to my blueprints. But there was something pathetic in her voice. And despite everything, I wanted my parents to be proud of me just once. "Let me think about it," I said. "Of course, but don't think too long. The seller has other interested buyers, and Emma is so excited about this. She's already picking out paint colors." After I hung up, I sat in my apartment for hours, staring at the financial spreadsheets I'd pulled up on my laptop. The numbers were brutal. Even with my salary, taking on a loan that size would mean living paycheck to paycheck for the next 30 years. I'd have to give up my apartment, stop contributing to my retirement fund, and forget about any dreams of traveling or starting my own engineering firm. But maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to finally be part of the family. Maybe living with Emma would help us rebuild the relationship we'd lost somewhere along the way. Maybe my parents would finally see me as more than just the responsible daughter who could be counted on to fix everyone's problems. 3 days later, I called them back. "I'll do it," I said. "But I have conditions." "Of course, sweetheart. What do you need?" "I oversee every aspect of the construction. I choose the contractors, I approve all materials, and I'm on site for every major milestone. This is going to be my house too, and I want it built right." "Absolutely. You're the expert. And I want my own space. A master suite with a private entrance. If I'm paying for this house, I want some privacy." "Done!" Emma will be so thrilled. As I hung up the phone, I felt a mixture of excitement and dread. I was about to bet my entire financial future on my family's promise that this time would be different. This time, I would finally belong. I had no idea I was about to learn the most expensive lesson of my life. When you're building on a foundation of lies, everything eventually comes crashing down. The loan approval process was surprisingly smooth. My credit score of 780 and steady employment history made me the kind of borrower banks loved. Within 2 weeks, I had a pre-approval letter for $475, enough to build the house and cover unexpected costs. What I didn't expect expect was how quickly my family's true colors would start showing. The first red flag came when we met with a real estate agent to close on the lot. I'd assumed my parents would at least contribute something toward the down payment, but when the agent asked for the earnest money, all eyes turned to me. "Sarah will handle that," my father said casually, not even looking up from his phone. $50,000. Gone. Just like that. "Don't worry, honey," my mother whispered as I signed the check with shaking hands. "Once Emma and Marcus are settled, they'll help with the payments." Marcus has some very promising job interviews lined up. Marcus, who had been unemployed for 8 months and spent most of his time playing video games in my parents' basement. But I nodded and smiled, choosing to believe the fantasy. The lot was beautiful, I had to admit. 2 acres of gently sloping land with a perfect view of the Rocky Mountains. As I stood there imagining the house we'd build, Emma came running up the hill in her designer boots that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in a month. "Sarah, isn't this just perfect? I can already see our kids playing in that big backyard." Our kids, as if she planned to share custody of her hypothetical children with me. "It's a great lot, Em. We'll be able to build something really special here." Oh, I have so many ideas. I've been browsing Pinterest for months. I want a huge kitchen with an island and a walk-in closet in the master bedroom that's basically like a boutique, and maybe we could do one of those infinity pools. I felt my chest tighten. "Emma, we need to be realistic about the budget. This is already a significant financial commitment." "But you said we had almost $500,000. We do, but that has to cover everything. Foundation, framing, electrical, plumbing, fixtures, landscaping. It adds up fast." Emma's face fell like a child who'd been told Christmas was canceled. "But I've already shown all my friends the inspiration photos. They're expecting something amazing." That should have been my second red flag right there. This wasn't about creating a family home. This was about Emma showing off to her friends. Over the next month, as I worked with architects to design the house, Emma's suggestions became increasingly elaborate. She wanted imported Italian tile in 3 bathrooms, a wine cellar, smart home technology throughout, and a guest house for when her friends visited. We're already at the top of our budget with the basic structure," I explained during one particularly tense meeting at our parents' kitchen table. "These upgrades would add another $100,000 easily." "Can't you just adjust the loan amount?" my mother asked, as if money were as simple as turning a faucet. "I'm already stretched to my limit. The monthly payments are going to be almost $3,000. I'll have to give up my apartment and move in immediately just to afford it." "Well, that's perfect." Emma clapped her hands. "We'll all be living together, just like when we were kids." Except when we were kids, I'd spent most of my time hiding in my room while Emma got all the attention, but I pushed that thought away. "Actually," my father cleared his throat, "we've been meaning to talk to you about the living arrangements." My stomach dropped. "Here it comes. Emma and Marcus are going to need some time to adjust to married life. Maybe it would be better if you waited a few months before moving in. Give them space to settle in as a couple." I stared at him. "Dad, I literally can't afford to keep my apartment and pay the mortgage. The only way this works is if I move in right away." "Oh, I'm sure we can figure something out," my mother said dismissively. "Maybe you could find a smaller place temporarily, or stay with friends." "Stay with friends while I pay $3,000 a month for a house I can't live in? It would just be temporary." Emma jumped in. "Just until Marcus finds a good job and we can start contributing to the payments." I looked around the table at the 3 people who were supposed to love me most in the world. They were asking me to bankrupt myself for their comfort, and they were talking about it like it was no big deal. "How long is temporary?" I asked quietly. Emma and my parents exchanged glances. 6 months? Emma said hopefully. "Maybe a year at most?" A year. They wanted me to pay for a house I couldn't live in for a year, but I was already in too deep. The loan papers were signed, construction was about to begin, and backing out now would destroy my credit and cost me the down payment. I was trapped, and I was beginning to suspect that had been the plan all along. "Fine," I said. 6 months. But after that, I'm moving into my master suite, and we're going to have a serious conversation about everyone contributing to the expenses." "Of course," my mother beamed. "You're such a generous sister, Sarah. Emma is so lucky to have you." As I drove home that night, I realized I'd been manipulated from the very beginning. They'd never intended for this to be our house. They'd wanted me to build Emma a house, and they'd convinced me to do it by making me think I'd have a place in their family. But I was an engineer. I understood structural integrity, load-bearing walls, and what happened when you built something on an unstable foundation. What my family didn't know was that I understood more than just the blueprints they'd approved. I understood exactly which corners I could cut that wouldn't show up until much later. Construction began in June, and I threw myself into the project with an intensity that surprised even me. I was on site every morning at 6 a.m., working closely with the contractors I'd personally selected. What my family saw as dedication to creating their dream home was actually something much more calculated. The foundation went in perfectly. Solid concrete footings that would last a century. I wasn't a monster. I wasn't going to create a safety hazard that could hurt someone, but there were other ways to ensure that a house wouldn't remain structurally sound in the long term. term, ways that would take months or even years to manifest, ways that only a civil engineer would know. The first major revelation came in July. I'd stopped by the site after work to check on the framing progress when I heard voices coming from inside the partially built structure. Emma and Marcus were there with my parents, and they were speaking in hushed tones that immediately put me on alert. I crept closer, using the incomplete walls as cover. "Can't keep stringing her along forever," Marcus was saying. "What happens when she expects to move in? We'll figure something out," my father replied. "The important thing is getting the house finished first." "But Dad, what if she actually tries to move into that master suite she keeps talking about?" Emma's voice was whiny, like a child complaining about sharing toys. "Marcus and I want to use that room as a nursery eventually." "She won't," my mother said with certainty that made my blood run cold. "Sarah's always been the responsible one. She'll do what's best for the family. But legally, it's her house," Marcus pointed out. "Her name is on everything." There was a long pause. Then my father spoke, and his words shattered what was left of my trust in my family. "We've been thinking about that. Sarah's always been difficult about money, selfish. Remember how she refused to help pay for Emma's wedding? If she becomes a problem, we can always claim she's having some kind of breakdown. Stress from the job, financial pressure. It wouldn't be hard to convince people that she's not capable of making sound decisions." My legs nearly gave out. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent if I tried to claim what was legally mine. "That seems extreme," Marcus said, though he didn't sound particularly bothered by the idea. "It won't come to that," Emma said confidently. "Sarah's always done what we wanted eventually. She just needs the right motivation." "What kind of motivation?" Marcus asked. "Well," my mother's voice took on that sickeningly sweet tone I'd grown to hate. "Sarah's always been desperate to be part of this family. If we make it clear that causing problems means losing us forever, she'll back down. She always does." I stood there in the shadows of the house I was paying for, listening to my family plan my emotional and financial destruction, and something inside me finally snapped. Not into anger. Anger would have been useless. Instead, I felt a cold, calculated clarity that I'd never experienced before. They thought they knew me. They thought I was the same people-pleasing pushover who'd spent her whole life trying to earn their love. They had no idea what a civil engineer could do with the right motivation. I waited until they left, then spent the next 3 hours walking through the construction site, making mental notes. The house was beautifully designed. Emma had insisted on an open floor plan with soaring ceilings and huge windows. What she didn't understand was that open floor plans required very specific structural support to remain stable. Over the next month, I began implementing my insurance policy. It started small, specifying a particular type of wood beam that I knew would warp under certain moisture conditions, using fasteners that met code but were on the lower end of the strength spectrum, adjusting the spacing of support joists by just enough to remain legal, but create subtle weak points. The beauty of my plan was its subtlety. Every choice I made was technically up to code. Any building inspector would approve the work, but I knew something they didn't: how these small compromises would interact with each other over time, especially during Colorado's dramatic weather changes. The real breakthrough came when Emma insisted on a particular type of trendy exterior siding that looked beautiful, but had known issues with moisture retention. I enthusiastically supported her choice, even though I knew it would accelerate the deterioration of the underlying structure. "Sarah's being so supportive about my design choices," I overheard Emma telling my mother one day. "I was worried she'd try to override everything with her engineering opinions. If only she knew that my engineering opinions were being very carefully applied." By August, the house was taking shape beautifully. Emma posted daily progress photos on social media, bragging to her friends about her custom dream home. She even started calling it Emma's house in casual conversation, apparently forgetting that my name was the only one on the mortgage documents. The final piece of my insurance policy came when Emma demanded a large deck off the back of the house. "For entertaining," she said. "I want to host barbecues and pool parties." I designed a gorgeous deck that would be the envy of the neighborhood. What I didn't mention was that I'd specified connection hardware that was perfectly adequate for normal use, but would gradually weaken under the stress of Colorado's freeze-thaw cycles. In 5 to 7 years, that deck would become a liability. But my timeline accelerated dramatically when I discovered just how far my family's deception went. I found the documents by accident. I'd been looking for the latest electrical inspection report in my father's home office when I knocked over a stack of papers. As I bent to pick them up, I saw my own signature on a document I'd never seen before. It was a quitclaim deed, transferring ownership of the house from me to Emma. My signature had been forged with impressive accuracy. My hands shaking, I photographed every page with my phone, then carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. They hadn't filed it yet, probably waiting until after the house was completed and I'd moved out temporarily. That night, I sat in my apartment going through bank statements and loan documents, piecing together the full scope of their betrayal. They'd planned this from the beginning, get me to finance and build the house, then legally steal it from me once it was complete. If I fought back, they'd claim I was mentally unstable. If I didn't fight back, I'd be left with a mortgage payment for a house I'd never own. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd assumed I was still the same naive little girl who'd always put family first. They had no idea that their civil engineer daughter had just decided to accelerate her timeline for structural failure. The house was completed in October, just as the first snow began dusting the Rocky Mountains. It was absolutely gorgeous. Emma's Pinterest dreams brought to life with my expertise and my money. The housewarming party was scheduled for the following Saturday, and Emma had invited half of Denver to see her new home. I spent that week making my final preparations, not for the party, but for the confrontation I'd been planning since discovering the forged deed. I'd consulted with 3 different lawyers, documented every financial transaction, and gathered evidence of the fraud. But more importantly, I'd made one last modification to my architectural masterpiece. The morning of the party, I arrived early with a box of what looked like housewarming gifts. Emma and Marcus were in the kitchen, arguing about where to put the catering setup. "Sarah! Perfect timing," Emma said, rushing over to hug me. "Isn't it beautiful? I still can't believe this is really my house." "Actually, Emma, we need to talk about that." Something in my tone made her step back. "What do you mean?" I set my box down on the pristine granite countertop that I'd paid for. "I mean, this isn't your house. It's my house. My name is on the deed, my name is on the mortgage, and my money paid for every single nail and tile." Emma laughed nervously. "Sarah, don't be silly. We're family. What's yours is ours, right?" "No, Emma. What's mine is mine." Marcus appeared in the doorway, followed by my parents. Perfect timing. "Sarah, honey, you're not still upset about the temporary living arrangement, are you?" my mother asked. "I thought we'd moved past that." "Oh, we've definitely moved past that," I said, pulling out my phone, "especially since I found this." I showed them the photograph of the forged quitclaim deed. The color drained from my father's face. "I don't know what you think that proves," he said, but his voice was shaky. "It proves that you've been planning to steal my house from the beginning. Did you really think I wouldn't notice my own forged signature?" Emma looked confused, glancing between our parents and Marcus. "What is she talking about?" "Nothing, sweetheart," my mother said quickly. "Sarah's just being dramatic." "Actually, Emma, let me explain what's been happening while you've been picking out throw pillows." I pulled out a folder from my box. "Our parents convinced me to build this house by telling me it would be ours. Then they gradually pushed me out, making it clear I wasn't welcome to live here, all while planning to forge documents to transfer ownership to you." "That's not," Emma started. "I have recordings," I interrupted, "of you and Marcus and our parents discussing how to handle me if I became a problem, including Dad's suggestion that you could have me declared mentally incompetent." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Marcus spoke up. "Sarah, even if that's true, you can't prove anything. It would be your word against all of ours." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Actually, Marcus, I can prove quite a bit. I've been documenting everything for months. Every payment, every decision, every conversation. I've also been making some modifications to ensure that if you steal my house, you won't enjoy it for very long." "What kind of modifications?" my father asked, and for the first time he looked genuinely worried. "Oh, nothing dangerous," I said casually. "I'm not a monster. But let's just say that a house built with substandard materials and questionable structural choices tends to develop problems over time, especially during Colorado winters." Emma's eyes went wide. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've been planning for this betrayal since July. Every beam, every joint, every connection in this house has been carefully designed to meet code today, but fail spectacularly over the next few years. The foundation is solid. I'm not going to let anyone get hurt. But everything above ground level, well, let's just say you might want to invest in good homeowners insurance." "You're bluffing," Marcus said, but his voice cracked. I pulled out another document from my box. "This is a detailed engineering report I prepared, documenting every structural weakness I've built into this house. Moisture retention issues that will cause the support beams to warp, fasteners that will corrode in precisely 18 to 24 months, a deck that will become unsafe within 5 years, electrical connections that meet code but will degrade faster than standard installations." My mother was staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Sarah, you wouldn't." "Oh, but I have. You see, when you've spent your entire life being underestimated by your family, you learn to plan ahead. You assumed I was the same pushover who'd do anything for your approval. You had no idea that your civil engineer daughter had the knowledge and the motivation to build you a very expensive house of cards." Emma sank into one of her designer chairs. But this is my dream home." "No, Emma. This is my nightmare house, built with my money, designed with my expertise, and engineered to fall apart piece by piece until it's uninhabitable. The beautiful irony is that every single choice I made is completely legal and up to code. Any inspector would approve this work." "What do you want?" my father asked quietly. I smiled and pulled out the final document from my box. "I want you to sign this." It was a legal agreement I'd had prepared. In exchange for not filing fraud charges for the forged deed and not reporting the numerous building code violations I could easily fabricate evidence for, they would pay me back every penny I'd invested in the house, with interest, and they would have 30 days to do it. We don't have that kind of money, my mother protested. Then you'd better figure out how to get it, because the alternative is that I call the police, report the fraud, and then sit back and watch your dream home slowly destroy itself over the next few years while you're stuck with my mortgage payments. Emma was crying now. Sarah, please, we're family. No, Emma. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't forge documents. Family doesn't plan to have each other declared mentally incompetent for financial gain. I looked around the beautiful kitchen one last time, then picked up my box. You have until next Friday to sign those papers and arrange payment. If you don't, I'll be making some very interesting phone calls. Oh, and Emma, you might want to cancel today's housewarming party. Trust me when I say you don't want a house full of witnesses when the first structural problems start showing up. As I walked toward the door, my father called after me. Sarah, wait, we can work this out. We're family. I turned back one last time. Dad, I spent 28 years trying to be part of this family. I finally learned that some foundations are too rotten to build on. And with that, I walked out of the house I'd built, leaving my family to contemplate exactly what their betrayal was going to cost them. The first call came 3 hours later, then another. By Sunday evening, I'd received 47 calls from various family members, none of which I answered. I was done being manipulated by tearful voices and false promises. Monday morning brought the first sign that my message had been received loud and clear. My mother showed up at my office building at 7 a.m., looking like she hadn't slept all weekend. Sarah, please, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, Mom. You have until Friday. But honey, we can't possibly come up with that much money in a week. The house cost almost $500,000. I'm aware of exactly how much it cost. I paid for it. She followed me into the lobby, drawing stares from my colleagues. Sarah, be reasonable. We're your family. Surely we can work out some kind of payment plan. I stopped walking and turned to face her. Mom, you were planning to steal my house and have me declared mentally incompetent if I objected. The time for family loyalty passed the moment you forged my signature. That was your father's idea. I never wanted. You stood there and listened to him plan it. You agreed to it. You're just as guilty as he is. Her facade cracked slightly. What if we give you back the house? What if we move out and you can live there like we originally planned? I almost laughed. You mean the house that's engineered to fall apart? Even if I wanted it, which I don't, it's going to cost more to fix than it's worth. No, Mom. You made your choice. Now you live with the consequences. Tuesday brought Emma, sobbing dramatically in my office parking lot. Sarah, please. You're destroying my entire life. Marcus and I were going to get married in the backyard. We were going to have babies in that house. Then you should have thought of that before you decided to steal it from me. I didn't know about the paperwork. I thought Mom and Dad had worked everything out with you. Emma, I heard you talking about using my master suite as a nursery. I heard you discussing how to manipulate me if I became a problem. Don't pretend you're innocent in this. She grabbed my arm as I tried to walk past her. What if I paid you back myself? I could get a job, start making payments. With what money, Emma? You've never held a job for more than 3 months in your entire life. I could learn. I could change. I looked at my 25-year-old sister, who was finally being forced to confront the reality of consequences for the first time in her life. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Emma, even if you got a job tomorrow, it would take you 30 years to pay me back. I'm not spending the next 3 decades waiting for you to maybe grow up. Wednesday brought Marcus, trying a different approach. Sarah, look, I get that you're angry, but this is affecting innocent people now. Emma's having panic attacks. Your mom hasn't eaten in 3 days. Is your revenge really worth destroying your whole family? My family destroyed itself when they decided to commit fraud. I'm just refusing to be their victim. But the house thing, that's pretty extreme, don't you think? Making it structurally unsound? Marcus, let me explain something to you. Every choice I made was legal and up to code. If the house develops problems over time, that's not my fault. That's just the result of using materials and methods that meet minimum standards rather than exceeding them. But you did it on purpose. Prove it. Show me one building code violation. Find one illegal modification. You can't, because there aren't any. He stared at me, clearly out of his depth. So what? You're just going to let the house fall down with us in it? The house isn't going to collapse tomorrow, Marcus. It's going to develop problems over time. Expensive problems. Problems that will make it increasingly difficult to live in and impossible to sell. Think of it as a very slow-motion eviction notice. Thursday brought my father, and for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt a twinge of sadness. He looked older, worn down by the stress of the past week. Sarah, I know I made mistakes, but please don't destroy your sister's life because you're angry at me. Dad, you taught me that actions have consequences. You also taught me that family loyalty only goes one way in this family. I'm finally putting those lessons to good use. If you do this, you'll never be welcome in this family again. Dad, I was never really welcome in this family. I was just useful. There's a difference. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if we could come up with half? Would you take half now and work out payments for the rest? For just a second, I wavered. Half would be enough to pay off my debts and start over. It would be the smart financial decision. But then I remembered sitting in the shadows of my own house, listening to them plan my destruction. I remembered 28 years of being the responsible one, the one who sacrificed for everyone else's as happiness. No, Dad, all of it, by tomorrow. Friday morning came and went with no word from my family. At noon, I called the lawyer I'd been working with. File the fraud charges, I said. All of them. By 2 p.m., I'd received a frantic call from my mother. Sarah, the police were just here. They arrested your father. I warned you what would happen if you didn't meet my deadline. But we're trying to get the money. Emma's been calling everyone we know, trying to borrow against the house. Mom, they can't borrow against a house that's in my name. And after today's fraud charges, I doubt any bank would loan them money anyway. There was a long silence. Then quietly, you've really thought of everything, haven't you? I'm an engineer, Mom. I plan for all possible outcomes. That evening, as I sat in my apartment planning my next steps, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of the house, my house, Emma's dream house, with a for sale sign in the front yard. The message read, "We found a buyer. Closing in 30 days. You'll have your money." I stared at the photo for a long time. They were selling the house to pay me back, which meant some innocent family was about to buy a beautiful home with serious structural problems they'd never see coming. For a moment, my conscience twinged. Then I remembered that every single choice I'd made was legal and up to code. The new owners would get exactly what they paid for. A house that met all current building standards. If they chose not to hire their own structural engineer for an inspection, that was their decision. Besides, the problems wouldn't manifest for years. By then, the new owners would assume it was normal wear and tear, not sabotage, and they'd have plenty of time to build equity before any major repairs were needed. My phone buzzed with another text from Emma. "I hope you're happy. You've destroyed everything." I typed back, "I didn't destroy anything, Emma. I just stopped letting you destroy me." Then I blocked the number and opened my laptop. It was time to start planning my new life, one where I'd never again mistake being useful for being loved. 6 months later, I was standing in the kitchen of my new condo in downtown Denver, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold through my floor-to-ceiling windows. The condo was smaller than the house I'd built for my family, but it was mine, completely, legally, and honestly mine. The money from the house sale had come through exactly as promised. $473,000 transferred to my account the day after closing. I'd paid off all my debts, put a substantial down payment on the condo, and still had enough left over to start the engineering consulting firm I'd always dreamed of. My business was thriving. Word had gotten around the Denver construction community about the young engineer who'd caught several major structural problems that other consultants had missed. What they didn't know was that my eye for potential failures had been honed by deliberately creating them. Ironic, but effective. I hadn't spoken to my family since the day the charges were dropped, a condition of receiving my money. My father had pled guilty to forgery and received probation and community service. Emma and Marcus had quietly broken up 2 months after losing the house, apparently unable to handle the stress of living in the real world without a safety net. The first contact came on my birthday in March. A card from my mother with a carefully neutral message. "Thinking of you today. Hope you're well. Mom." I threw it away without reading it twice. The second contact came in April. A text from Emma. "Sarah, I got a job at a bank. I'm learning about financial responsibility. Maybe we could talk sometime?" I didn't respond, but the message that really got my attention came in May, from a number I didn't recognize. "Hi, Sarah. This is Jennifer Walsh. I bought your old house in Lakewood. Could we talk?" My blood ran cold. Had the structural problems started showing up already? It had only been 8 months since completion. Even with my sabotage, the issues shouldn't be manifesting this quickly. I called her back immediately. "Ms. Walsh, this is Sarah. You wanted to talk about the house?" "Yes, thank you for calling me back. I hope you don't mind. But I did some research and found out you were the engineer who oversaw the construction. I wanted to thank you." Thank me? This was not the conversation I'd been expecting. Thank me for what? For doing such excellent work. My husband and I hired our own structural engineer to do an inspection before we bought. We always do that with new construction. He was amazed by the quality of the work. He said he'd never seen such attention to detail in ensuring long-term structural integrity. I almost dropped the phone. "I'm sorry, what?" "The foundation work especially." He said whoever designed it really knew what they were doing. "Built to last centuries," he said, "and all the materials choices. Everything is top grade, designed to withstand Colorado weather extremes. We actually got a discount on our homeowner's insurance because of the construction quality." I sat down heavily in my desk chair. That's wonderful to hear. We love the house so much. Emma, the previous owner, told us you were her sister, and that there had been some family drama around the sale. I hope you don't mind us reaching out directly, but we wanted you to know that your work is appreciated. After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone for a long time. Then I pulled up the construction files on my computer, the real ones, not the fake documentation I'd prepared to scare my family. Reading through them again, I realized what had happened. In my anger and desire for revenge, I'd told my family I'd sabotaged the construction. I'd prepared fake documentation showing structural weaknesses that didn't exist. I'd convinced them that the house would fall apart, and they'd believed me completely. easy. But the truth was, I could never actually sabotage a building. My professional ethics wouldn't allow it. My personal integrity wouldn't allow it. Every choice I'd made during construction had actually been the best possible choice for long-term stability. I'd built Emma's dream house exactly the way I would have built my own. The substandard materials I'd told them about, they were actually premium materials I'd selected for their durability. The questionable structural choices, they were innovative solutions that exceeded code requirements. The deck I'd claimed would fail in 5 years, it was engineered to last 50. I'd scared my family into selling a perfect house by convincing them it was flawed, and they'd believed me because they'd never trusted my professional judgment to begin with. My phone buzzed with another message from Jennifer Walsh. "Oh, and Sarah, I thought you should know. The structural engineer said this house is so well built, it will probably still be standing in 100 years. You should be proud of your work." I was proud of my work. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely proud of something I'd accomplished. Not the manipulation, not the revenge, but the actual house itself. I'd built something beautiful and lasting, even while convinced I was building a trap. That evening, I got one more unexpected call. "Sarah, it's Emma." I almost hung up, but something in her voice stopped me. "I know you probably don't want to talk to me, but I needed to tell you something. I drove by the house today. Jennifer, the new owner, she was in the front yard with her kids, and they looked so happy. She told me about the structural inspection, about how well built everything is." Emma was quiet for a moment. Then, "Sarah, I realize now that you never actually sabotaged anything, did you? You just made us think you did. Why would you think that? Because I know you. The Sarah who spent her whole childhood making sure I didn't get hurt, who taught me to ride a bike, who helped me with homework even when I was terrible to you, that Sarah could never actually put people in danger, even people who hurt her." I didn't respond, but I didn't hang up either. I've been thinking about everything that happened, and I realized that we never actually lost anything except the house. But you lost your whole family. And maybe we were never much of a family to begin with. Emma, no, let me finish. I got that job at the bank, and I've been learning about mortgages and construction loans and all the things you tried to teach me when we were planning the house. Sarah, you could have bankrupted yourself building that house for us. You nearly did, and we never even said thank you. I closed my eyes, feeling a mixture of grief and relief I hadn't expected. "I don't expect forgiveness," Emma continued. "I know we don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that I understand now, and I'm sorry for all of it." After she hung up, I poured myself a glass of wine and stood on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace. I'd spent my whole life trying to build a place for myself and my family, using the wrong materials on a foundation that was never solid to begin with. It had taken losing everything to realize that some things can't be fixed. They have to be rebuilt from the ground up. Now, at 29, I finally understood the difference between being needed and being valued, between being useful and being loved, between building something for others and building something for yourself. My family had taught me that sometimes the only way to save yourself is to walk away from a structure that's too damaged to repair. But they'd also taught me something else, that when you finally do find solid ground, the foundation you build on it can last forever. What do you think about this story? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and protecting yourself? Sometimes the people who are supposed to support us end up being the ones who undermine our foundation. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for listening to my story, and thank you all for being here.